This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, episode number 195. Hello, Timothy.
Hello, hello, hello.
It's a beautiful day today in our neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a kind of summer day. It's not even a spring day. It's like fucking eight. It was like 86 or something. I don't know.
That's 86.
Oh yeah.
Holy.
Oh, at midday, it was fucking like around 2 in the afternoon. It was like 86 degrees out.
Well, I hate to be, as usual, the bearer of bad news, or in this case, the bearer of bad balloons, excuse the pun,
Oh boy.
but both coasts are being invaded. The California coast is being invaded by, I don't know if you've seen these small blue, they're almost like jelly like creatures, and they're washing up like in Huntington Beach, almost all the beaches there. And they're creatures from a family called Velella, or by the wind sailor in English. And they're small and rubbery and they look like jellyfish, but they're not harmful. And what's happening is, climate change. They're washing up in great numbers and they look really, really weird. So Zuma Beach, Huntington Beach, Manhattan Beach, Salt Creek Beach,
Yeah.
and they're just arriving in droves. And at the same time, I mean, we have on the East Coast, as it's called, the giant stinking blob has reached record-breaking size, and it's now headed to
What
Florida. That
what the fuck is that?
well, that's this. It's absolutely freaking huge, and it's
Is it
sargasso
alive?
seaweed. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
and it brings like tons of odorous algae, usually the Caribbean and some parts of Florida, but now it's going to be the largest seaweed blob to ever journey across the earth.
That thing sounds
And
fun.
oh god, and I mean
Oh
Florida's been
god.
receiving, some small invasions of this every year for a while, but this is going to be the record breaking. It's just going to be, let me see, how big did they say it was? I mean, it's just absolutely
Is it like the
gargantuan.
size of like a county or something like that?
Bigger than that. Yeah, it's
Whoa.
it's humongous. It's bigger than Florida itself, and it smells
It's
of
bigger
rotten
than
eggs.
Florida itself. Are you it's not you're that's bullshit.
I'm not kidding you.
Bigger than Florida
It's trying
itself?
to be gigantic. I'm trying to find the actual size of it. Well, millions of tons, put it this way, and the largest blob ever recorded. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
And it's not even
Mm.
peak season for it yet. Yeah, 13 million tons, they think. Unbelievable.
So I mean, but even with I guess is this a byproduct of global warming? I don't
Well, I mean, that
understand.
there's so much of it is. I mean, usually it is. It's kind of a shelter for birds and fish eat off its sea
Okay.
turtles and
Yep.
crustaceans, but not in this amount is the problem.
So
It's
so it's
nomadic. It's as the oceans are warming, it's just blooming in unfamiliar
right, and I take it
places.
The Gulf Stream's taking it. So
It's
because it's coming from the
going.
Caribbean to Florida is what it's going north,
Yeah,
right?
it's coming to get you. So we have that on either coast. And then in the middle of the country, I don't know if you've heard the latest disaster from East Palestine,
Oh
that
no.
a open truck carrying 40,000 tons of the toxic soil took a
In
spill,
in East Palestine?
uh, uh, carrying the debris from East Palestine,
Oh, God.
took a spill. Hang on a second. I mean, this is so now we have both coasts, and a truck carrying 40,000 pounds of toxic soil derailed on Monday, spilling half of it in Columbiana County,
Oh,
near Dayton. Yeah,
so this
yeah.
thing is just it might be possessed toxic waste. Maybe the toxic waste is actually possessed. Um,
I think it's possessed toxic waste. And then not far from that, we have, I don't know if you heard about this. This is absolutely horrifying. More than 2,000 people told to evacuate after an inferno engulfs Indiana plastics recycling plant, spewing a
hooray.
huge cloud of toxic black smoke visible 20 miles away. Warning, it will burn for days,
No, man.
if not longer.
Whoa.
Now, the one piece of kind of interesting, none of the good, there's no good news in this. This is horrifying. Did you hear the one about the woman? You've heard of deaths by chocolate. Did you hear the one about the woman who there was an explosion in a chocolate factory in Pennsylvania, and a woman fell into a vat of chocolate.
Hershey? I mean, is it Hershey,
They
Pennsylvania?
didn't specify.
How many
It
chocolate
actually
factories
saved
are in
her.
Pennsylvania?
Yeah, it is. That Hershey's is, yeah. Anyway, that's what I'm enjoying for
Hershey
the news
sucks.
today.
Hershey sucks. I mean, their best selling product. They're literally their best selling product is Reese's, which they bought, I think, way back in the, I don't know, 80 years ago, and that's
Yeah,
their
well, I mean,
best selling product.
there's a lot of heavy metals in that crappy.
It's well, it's poor people's chocolate. I don't what yeah, I don't even want to talk about it. So India is about to any day now is about to surpass China as the most populous country in the world. It's not clear if they're celebrating that. It's so strange because United States is the third biggest country in the world. And we got about like on the books. We have about 336 million. But above that's India and China, which are like around 1.4 billion. I think Indonesia's fourth. I forget what the whole list is. Nigeria's in there, and Russia's in there, and Mexico's in there, and Brazil. But it doesn't matter. It's a big leap. But yeah, they're still breeding. They're growing, well, at a faster rate than anyone else. Oh, I shouldn't say that. They're growing at a faster rate than China.
It's terrible. I don't know what to do about it. Well, I got to get back to the chocolate lady for
Please,
a minute.
please,
No,
please.
it wasn't a Hershey's. It was a Palmer chocolate. But the woman spent 9 hours screaming for help and waiting as the firefighters were battling the inferno. She had smelt gas 30 minutes before, but just get back to work. No biggie.
Well, speaking of Coco, there is a dog named Coco who basically in Plymouth, England, is undergoing canine alcohol withdrawal. Yes, someone was complaining about this weirdo, one of their neighbors, and these dogs are acting strange. Well, it turns out he was feeding them alcohol, beer, and when the authorities came, he and one of the there's two dogs. One of the other dogs were dead from alcohol poisoning. It was some big. He obviously got them to acquire the taste of alcohol. I mean, dogs will drink beer. Hard alcohol, I don't know if they do, but Coco is still alive, but is having withdrawals. It basically was a alcoholic. No one knows the specifics because everyone's dead, but they know Coco is an alcoholic dog, and they're trying to do their best to wean it off of.
Well, maybe the woman who fell into the chocolate vat could adopt him, and they can recover together.
Yes.
Her from burns, him from his burning stomach from
Coco. Yes, Coco is. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what this man in Plymouth, England, was thinking, or I don't know.
I mean, you shouldn't feed your kids or your dogs or your pets cannabis or alcohol.
Actually, no. I'd like to bring this kind of connected even more. You're not supposed to feed dogs chocolate.
No, exactly.
Coco shouldn't eat cocoa. That's poison for those fucking things.
Or onions, or any number of other things.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know about onions.
Yeah, very toxic.
Speaking of alcohol, I'm still recovering from a very indulgent weekend. It was the Eric Andre birthday party, which was fun, and then I saw you the next night, which was fun. So it was a nothing but fun weekend, and I'm glad I did it. Can I connect another story? I'm making all these threads here. Speaking of dogs, Denise Frazier, 19 of Mississippi, was arrested for having sex with dogs.
I mean.
Well, so now she's saying because it was filmed. That's how she got busted.
Right.
And now she's saying that she was
obviously filmed and posted. Yeah, I'd imagine.
Well, exactly. And she's been working as an amateur porn.
I mean,
actress. And people pay her to do porno, but like the home porno. But the latest clients were asking her to have sex with dogs. And now she's been arrested. She has a lawyer. She's saying they forced me to do it, even though she did admit to doing it. But the in Mississippi's got. I mean, you can't. A blowjob's illegal in Mississippi because that's technically sodomy. So so they're not going to put up with that. But the quote was, because they don't know what to do. We've never dealt with this particular case before. Carter, I don't know if he's the local DA. I don't know what he has said. There are really no true words to describe it other than disgusting.
And what state was this in again?
Mississippi, the poorest state in the nation.
I'm going to top that with another state,
Please.
Missouri.
Well, Missouri's really going down the tube.
Oh, Jesus. Missouri Republican defends letting parents marry off 12-year-old kids. Now, the Republican Party, who claim that the Democrats are satanic pedophiles.
Right.
So Missouri State Senator Mike Moon defended the rights of parents to marry off children as young as 12 years old. Now, even though he made remarks during a contentious debate over banning, gender affirming care for other minors, he said, I know plenty of people that were married at 12 and they're still married. And that was the debate him says, look, excuse me. So you want to make it legal for a 12-year-old to be raped by an adult as long as their parents agree to let it happen. And that's what he said.
Do you know
any kids married at 12? I do. And guess what? They're still married. I mean,
but what the subtext to this is all about religious rights. So because people, well, especially in more extreme sects of religions, that's not uncommon that, it's not the female's choice and the parents arrange these marriages. And so it's all about the religious shit. And technically, I think you can do that even in New York. I think with religious freedom, I think you can kind of do that.
Look, it ain't stopping
all over the United States.
That's for sure. I mean, look, they just take a honeymoon for a night or two. Any number of candidates that are going to the church under their parents.
The hypocrisy is insane. So yeah, as long as you stamp some kind of religion on there, then you can have sex with minors. I mean, that's basically what he's saying. And I don't know. Fucking guy sucks, clearly. Let's see. What else? Any other news stories?
Not much going on. No, I'm laying low.
I'm
filming a project with Michelle Handelman tomorrow,
that's exciting. All right.
Who knows when that will go out, but it's called Delirium. We'll see what that involves. And that's about it.
You're about to go to Europe?
I go to Europe next week for the suicide tribute to Lille, Bourges, Marseille, and Bucharest. And then back, it's quickie. We've been back and just planning.
May, June, and July are all starting to fill up. So
planning little 4 days away. So
I'm excited about all that. So
happy to hear it.
Who's our guest this week? Because we interviewed a few people this week. Who's going to be our guest?
So our guest this week, Tim, is somebody I've known for more than 3/4 of my life.
Oh, yes.
We met, he was 14, I was 17 at CBGB's, and that's Phil Caivano, now in Monster Magnet, and was in Blitzspeer, but was in Shrapnel, a band of 14 to 16-year-olds who dressed in Vietnam vets with sandbags and opened for the Ramones on any number of occasions. And very cool to be back in touch with one of my oldest and dearest friends, Phil. That's what's happening today. Get all the dirt right here. It's the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and a very dear friend. Phil, we've known each other more than 3/4 of our life. Phil Caivano of Monster Magnet, Shrapnel, producer, bass player, guitarist, engineer, gearhead, my dirty cousin. Hi, Phil.
Hey, Lydia, it's so good to be here. So good to see you.
It's been a long time since we've known each other, and too long since we've seen each other. We got to do this more often.
Been a couple of years. I think last time I saw you was that show you had around the corner from the Bowery.
Okay, the art show.
Yeah. That was awesome.
Right. Thank you very much. Hey, I think we're going to be on a bill together soon in Spain. That's what it says.
That's what it says. So watch out, Spain. Here we go.
Monster Magnet and Retrovirus is going to be brutal.
It's going to be awesome. It's our first tour in 3 years.
How long is the tour?
Our tour is a little over a month. our first
Okay.
time back in Europe. And it's funny because you brought up Spain. We ended the last one in 2020 in Barcelona. And
I wish I would
everybody
have been there.
and everything was, starting to go on. I stayed there for a week to just take in the city. It's been a long time since I had been there, and everybody's running around, and we were over there just like a little bit before every city that got affected with coronavirus, and I'm walking around, people aren't wearing masks, people are going crazy. I'm going to museums, I'm going to cafes, and came home to what we all came home to. So yeah, I love it
Well,
there. So I look
I'm
forward
the
to
outlier because I didn't get COVID, but I was all around all the time while it was going down, and I don't plan on getting it still. So I don't know how
no,
that happened.
yeah, and it's going to be great to share a bill with you again after all these years. I think the last time we may have shared a bill with you and a band I was in was probably Shrapnel and Teenage Jesus.
Now,
Whoa, well, when was that?
okay, we're gonna start at the beginning because I don't specifically remember that gig, but we're gonna start with Shrapnel. Phil, you and I were the babies. You were 14, I think.
It's so funny you bring that up because I was with my nephew this afternoon, and my nephew is a huge fan of all of this. He's 17 now. And I told him that I met you, I was younger than him. Yeah, I was 14 running away from home, going to CBGB's, from Jersey. And I'm in the town now that I used to run away from home, and this is where I am now. But
And I was 17.
yes, and
And you would call me from high school.
that's right.
Enough
That's
said,
funny.
maybe about that.
Yeah, but those were,
But you're on Shrapnel at 14. When the hell did you start playing? Because you were playing bass in Shrapnel?
I was playing bass in Shrapnel, so that was we were just like a little local band here in Jersey,
Yeah, but when did you pick up the bass? I mean, you're only 14 and you guys are already pretty damn good with
well,
costumes, sandbags, opening for the Ramones, Suicide, the Cramps. Come on. How'd
well,
that happen?
it happened so we all were in our first bands, probably at just okay, we're gonna start a band, we need to be cool, we music was the thing, what it was listening to everything from Sly Stone to the Rolling Stones and everything in between, Chicago, and
Alice
we
Cooper.
yeah, Alice Cooper, and all the things from the 70s, and we'd start these little basement bands and have these bunch of guys getting together, and it evolved into this thing. So when I was around 14 was when Dave Windorf, who I'm in Monster Magnet with, who was the singer in Shrapnel, those guys had went up to CBGB's, and they had saw who they see, the Damn Dead Boys show, and they were like, you have to come next time, and you can get in. I didn't think I'd get in because I was so young.
That is the question I ask everybody from back in those days. How the hell did we always get in? We always got in for free. No biggie. We got in. We got in.
Yeah. And so then what happened was, so after going to that summer of going to a lot of shows, we were playing out here, stupid parties and things like that
In Jersey.
in Jersey. And we found out about the audition night thing. So we logged all of our
Everybody did it.
we logged all of our stuff up there, and we played the audition. We didn't play until 4 o'clock in the morning, like everyone else. And the thing that happened that night was that there was a couple of key people that were there left over. That one of them was God bless him, Arturo Vega.
Right. The right hand man of the Ramones.
And Dee Dee was there, and Joey was there. Cheetah and Stiv were there, and Legs McNeil. So, and we're background music. We're playing who the fuck knows what we were playing. We had a few original songs. We were playing some covers and stuff. And we played an MC5 song, and I'll never forget this. Stiv walked up to the front of the stage and just stood there like, who are these kids playing an MC5 song? And so after that, we all went over to Artie's loft and we kind of got in with it. And we, okay,
Because
we're
didn't
going
the
to do.
Ramones kind of adopt shrapnel? In a
It was
sense?
actually, I want to say that was through, yes, they did. They really liked us a lot. And it was really kind of through the punk magazine thing. And Joey and Daniel got along really, really well. And Arturo got us into the studio to make our singles. Arturo was really, really instrumental in helping us out. And so through that, with Joey and Dee Dee and the rest of the guys, they got us on some shows with them, and that gave us a little bit of oomph. And then, one of the other key bands that memorable for us was around that same time, Hilly liked us a lot for some stupid reason. Who knows why?
All right, and let me just hold up for a minute, because Arturo Vega was very responsible for the logo of the Ramones. He was very organized. He had a lot to do also with the Howell Gallery, which you just talked about.
Yes.
And then Hilly was, the guy that sat at the door that was CBGB since God knows when.
Yes, and so and Arturo's loft was right around the corner, so you'd been there, like everybody went there, and it was kind of like in between bands, in between shows, after shows, before shows. So, we had ended up there, and then through that we played with the Dead Boys a little bit, like the Cramps. When CBGB's theater opened, this is a funny one. I was still living out here. It was one of the first shows at CBGB's theater on 2nd Avenue. So we're going up, and I had all of our props with my derelict friends from Jersey in a station wagon, and the station wagon breaks down, and the van keeps going with all the gear. I end up hitchhiking to New York to play the fucking show.
Oh man.
Who hitchhikes anymore? Like I'm
Well,
out there.
look, not only hitchhiking, but we're going to get into this in a minute. You were a taxi driver. We're going to get into that in a minute. So,
but those days, Lydia, you were there. It was a really special time and place. And it's fun to talk to you about it and people who were there, specifically you, because, there's a lot of people who were there, who fantasize about it. And that whole, hey, you're there. I don't think about it really all that much, other than that, I was fortunate to be there as a teenage kid, and I loved it, and I loved it. It was better than Disneyland.
if you weren't there, you can't even, we can only try to define it. What I was saying to somebody the other day is, I remember this one shot in a Vivian Dick film where I'm sitting in a window, and I think it's 3rd Street between B and C, C and D, and out the window is just absolute destruction of the Lower East Side, the way it was. And there's not that much footage of how really frickin' destroyed it was, especially the further alphabetically you went.
Yeah, there's definitely not. And it's a visual memory, and there's some photographs, and there's a time frame. And what brings me back to that spot, which I enjoy, is the music of it all. And a lot of
It
these
was very diverse.
Very diverse. And the other thing that I think gets glorified from people, and I talked to some of my friends from the UK about this, because they were around the scene that went on in London at the time and all that. They're like, you kind of knew who everybody was. There weren't a real lot of people. You go online and you see all these photos and these things. People, there were thousands of people at CBGB's. No,
dozens.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's
dozens, the same ones every night.
Every night.
Every night.
Every night.
Now, how did your parents? Okay, let's go back to when did you first pick up an instrument? I mean, you were pretty good by 14.
I started playing instruments when I was about 10.
Okay.
And what were the first ones, or what was the first one?
The first one was a shitty acoustic guitar that hurt my fingers and I couldn't play, but it was after that. I had this little acoustic guitar and I was kind of messing around. My dad was really instrumental too, because he was an artist and his friends used to come around. They go in the backyard and smoke tons of weed and drink wine. and listen to, like, like I said, like I love the band Chicago, like because of that time frame,
that kind of like big band meets rock and roll, and there was a few, obviously Chicago, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Three Dog Night, all that kind of
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
All those three bands, and then Sly and the Family Stone.
Well, which I'm actually more into Graham Central Station these days, the spin-off Larry Graham band. I've been really digging those records. But
yeah, so through people encouraged me to play guitar, to always be acoustic guitar with those guys and my dad's friends, and so it led to that. And then because I couldn't really grasp it that young, and then like later on, I say the band that really changed my life was my cousin turned me onto the Velvet Underground. Like I must have been about 12. So,
and then Chicago started going into like DX7 housewife music. You had to kind of let go of that, or
well, and then also, like,
But wait, let's look up the Velvet Underground for a minute, because a lot of people, it was very definitive in their life. But for me, the Velvet Underground, like Black Angel's Death Song, The Gift, like the more really out there stuff. I mean, I couldn't stand things like Pale Blue Eyes. That was just me, because you know how I was. But I really like their more outlandish, noisy stuff.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal. The Gift, right? What's it?
Black Angel's Death Song.
I heard her
Yeah.
call my name.
Yeah.
The guitar in
Sister
that.
Ray. Sister Ray.
Yeah, and so from that, okay, so then the vision and the dream of like playing music and being in a band became real. And then sitting around one time with even before I met the guys in Shrapnel, like we had everyone's like, oh, we're going to start this band, and they all the other instruments were picked out. They're like, and they point to me, you're going to be the bass player. I'm like, okay. So that went to that, and so then all the harder rock started coming in. A lot of British stuff started coming in, like, and then Grand Funk Railroad and all that stuff. Then the search began of like where stuff came from, and that's where the other band. The record that really changed my life that I can't speak enough about, that I listen to constantly still, is the First Stooges record. I mean, and then when you think about, because I do a lot of reading and stuff and talking to people who were there, and I love talking, and I got to meet Ron pretty well and got to know Ron pretty well before he passed away. And the connection to Cale. So there was always this connection back to the things that I ended up loving, back to the Velvets. And then I remember the first time I saw a New York Dolls record, I was like,
Oh,
what?
forget it.
I remember
Why I ran away to New York. Exactly.
and I saw that record in a store, and I was like, New York Dolls? Like nothing, guys in drag, like nothing from where it's nothing from where I'm from. There's probably some drag queens around here, like that were underground in Asbury Park and stuff like that. But like I saw that record and had to buy it and listen to it. So those were the days, remember, Lydia, you'd go into record stores and be like, what is that? What is this? What is this? What is that? And then,
And if you knew one thing, you knew the other thing, because there was some kind of connection to anything that was outside. What's interesting to me is, so you're naming these, the Stooges is understandable, but you're naming the most out Velvet Underground stuff. You're naming the New York Dolls, which were really just rock and roll amped up in dresses and fantastic lyrics. But then the music that you actually took on or became was much more rock based until it became like space rock with the late latter day Monster Magnet. But I was listening to some Blitzspeer, and I heard a bit of Alice Cooper in there.
Well, yeah, well, that's the other thing too. There's tons of Alice Cooper, like, with the magazines that were around back then, between Circus, Cream, a rock scene,
Bibles.
raves, they were Bibles. And then
They were Bibles.
And Alice was so far influential to us guys,
Well, and you have to remember, which few other people I know do, Midnight Special. The Friday and Saturday night rock shows were amazing, and all of these really influential to us. Even the New York Dolls, amazing on Don Kirshner's rock concert, Midnight Special, etc.
And so through Alice, found Bowie, and then even before Bowie, I was really into Mark Bolan. I loved
Oh,
Mark.
absolutely.
I just even his weird stuff that I wasn't aware of in the beginning. Backtracking with Bolan, and his history. So, and Slade, forget about it. I love,
I saw Slade.
like,
Did you like the suite?
love the Suite.
Of course,
Saw the
right?
suite, and I might have seen Sweet. I mean, I have it could be a false memory. I'm thinking I saw the Sweet and Slade together at
Yeah.
14 in upstate New York. I could be imagining the Sweet part, but
So
totally into
everything, so everything musically and culturally started overlapping. Everything started overlapping and overlapping. I was a big Ian Hunter fan, this guy with the glasses and the big H guitar, Mata Hoople, like all these
What
things.
about Joe Bryant? Were you aware of
Oh
Joe
yeah, I know
Bryant?
who that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so then we got really, so you mentioned the
Oh,
space
I
rock.
got to stop you, Phil, because one of my favorite albums from that period, and I talk about it all the time and I listen to it all the time, is the Mick Ronson Slaughter on 10th Avenue.
Amazing record.
Amazing. It's
Amazing.
so cabaret, so huge. You see where Bowie stole a lot of Aladdin Sane from. It's such an underrated record.
Well,
It's
that's
so good.
the great documentary besides Bowie, the Mick Ronson story.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. And
You're coming over and we're gonna listen to the
yeah,
Mick, or I'll come to you. We're
I
gonna listen
love,
to the
love,
Mick
love
Ronson
Ronson.
record.
And so then the other thing was we got really into the psych. Well, even before and around the time of the punk rock thing, and a little bit before that, before was Hawkwind, Budgie, Amandul, all the Kraut stuff, and like all these bands, but really Hawkwind. Dave Windorf and I were gigantic Hawkwind fans, and that was like the psychedelic part of it. It was really interesting and really connective. And it's funny that like when I again talking to other people and mostly from the UK and Berlin, they were like a lot of punk rockers were into Hawkwind, were into Mata Hoople. I'm like, well, it all kind of makes sense. It all kind of starts to make sense after a while, where all of our musical and creative lineage kind of connects. Like
I was into Dr. Feelgood,
Dr.
Wilco
Feelgood.
Johnson. I mean, this was like the most sadistic bar band on record, if you ask me. I was always attracted to the sadism of Dr. Feelgood.
Oh yeah. There's a friend of mine from Detroit, really interesting cat, John Brannon from Negative Approach, Laughing Hyena.
Love him. Trying to get him on the show. Love him. Yeah.
When John and I met, it was like we were connected at the hip for 40 years and didn't know each other. All the same exact musical influences every step of the way. And from Negative Approach, where he was known as this hardcore guy, he's the biggest glam rock freak in the world. It's amazing. And I'll show you something really quick.
Oh, show it. We hide our platforms in the closet.
Nice.
Don't fit anymore.
I found this some years back in my mom's attic. It's my Alice Cooper collage.
Oh,
fantastic.
I was like a kid, right? Freak rock is here to stay.
Nice.
I covered Black Juju for like a decade.
I remember that. Your version is phenomenal.
Well, thank you. I can't wait to send you my version of War Pigs, which Weasel Waltz plays every instrument on, because I know Black Sabbath also came into the mix.
But you were, Lydia, the thing that I always liked, I always admired about you is all the artistic stuff. And I think that's one of the things that culturally gets a little, I mean, the people who were there, I guess, we were there and we know, and we saw it happen and it's almost like kind of happened right in front of our faces and under our own feet, was the art stuff and all the creative side of it. And even like the art music stuff and things that you were always very in tune with. But like, when you think about the artists that were running around doing what they were doing, who a lot of them have passed on, but
David Wojnarowicz, one of my favorite of all time and still is, yeah.
We can get with the big ones that we all know about, the Herrings and the Basquiats and stuff like that, but they were just kids running around doing the same thing we were doing in the art world. But like, it was really the last place that music, art, culture, creativity, You with the spoken word, the shows, the films, Kern, you know, like
Right.
guy with a
Beth and
camera,
Scott B. Yep.
you know, like it was a time and a place. And culturally, it's maybe the last place that something like that really, really happened because of what you talked about before, the devastation of like what New York was at the time. That's where we all ended up. It made sense.
Well, I like to describe that period. I mean, especially regarding No Wave as a cross between like Kent State, Nixon, Vietnam War, the failure of the 60s, The Son of Sam, Summer of Love turned into the Summer of Hate Fuck by Charles Manson. All of that, which at first had a positive concept in the 60s, which we were not even teenagers yet, the failure of it and what actually then happened, okay, uh, created this, well, for me at least, and No Wave, a nihilism, like that's just like it wasn't even about no future. It's about right fucking now,
Right.
right now, and that's why so many things, so many musicians were making films, were doing paintings. It was such an amalgamation of everything because it wasn't like we didn't think about tomorrow. We were thinking about right now.
Right. I love that you say that because it's like it's another thing that when people glorify the CB's days, it really wasn't that long.
Yeah,
It
no.
really it was not that long. And then you guys took it over and all that other stuff that was going on there. I remember going in there going, what the fuck is happening? Max is closed. No one ever talks about that, you know,
Well, there
like
is a documentary. I haven't seen it, but no, I mean, yeah, Max's. But then again, I don't even know how Teenage Jesus had a residency at Max's because there was really a divide, like the CBGB bands and the. Even though I also saw the Ramones at Max's Kansas City, but there was kind of a slight divide there for
there
some
was,
reason.
but some people cross-platformed and were able to do both. But
Now
I
wait,
like,
now tell me about what about Shrapnel opening for Suicide? Because, I'm doing a suicide tribute in Europe where I do half Ellen Vega and half suicide songs, and it's freaking amazing.
well, you know, Alan was so nice to us guys. Like I think Alan really doesn't get enough credit. He really does not.
His wife is writing a book, and it'll be out soon. His wife, who trains boxers and is a boxer, manages boxers, Liz Lamiere, she went on some shows with my suicide tribute in Europe.
Yeah,
She's
I
writing
mean
a book, and I mean, his art was so incredible. And
his
I mean,
art.
suicide,
Oh,
outrageous.
Marty. I remember Marty. I remember just seeing Marty. I have this vivid memories of just like walking down the street, and there's Marty Rev like walking down the street with a members only jacket on with glasses, going like, "Wow, that's Marty Rev.
Oh yeah.
He's fucking cool." Well, Suicide were really like to me of all the bands of all, well, it's the art of it all, were that real connection for me mentally and visually to back to my dream of the Velvets. Like I had this the Velvets that you then when you put on that first Cherie Cherie, it's like, come on, I want to weep and cry. It's so beautiful.
Well, exactly. The doo-wop, the psychosis of like Frankie Teardrop or Harlem. Then we have Dream Baby Dream. That the broad scape of that between doo-wop and murder.
Hilarious.
How could you not love it?
Yeah, and like and the sonically, well, the thing that always blew me away about Suicide, you never knew what you were going to get. So you had to be there.
You had to be there.
You like, you know, it's hard to explain. You saw them one night, they did one thing, the next night they did another thing. Alan's doing this, Alan's doing that, and Marty's cool as fuck back there. It's like, come on.
I feel I got to ask you because you might be the only one I know who saw a band that you cannot find any information on them at all at this point. They were one of my favorite bands at that period. They had one or two songs on the CBG records. Manster.
Oh, Manster, I do not know a lot about them.
The lead singer was like 6'3", stood behind the drummer. Songs of basement torture. All right, we'll talk about that later. Nobody can fill me in on this. I might have been their only fan. I don't know. Could have
Oh,
been.
the name sounds familiar, but I don't know a lot about it. Then, okay, Shrapnel's first show ever was with Screaming
After
Mad.
the audition.
After the audition was with Screaming Mad George.
Must have been wild.
Yeah. Yep. And so, but yeah, all that, but Alan was really kind to us, and he was just like, he was always around. I remember, even years after that, seeing Alan at Danceteer, he remembered your name, made you feel like you were, like you were part of the club. Like
My
he
first
gave you,
friends in New York. I know.
yeah, he was fantastic.
Absolutely amazing. So, all right, you're doing Shrapnel, you're 14, you're going back and forth from Jersey. When did you actually then decide, okay, that's it, I got to live on the Lower East Side? And of course,
Well,
to support yourself, you're driving a frickin' it
well,
just made you hotter to me. Made you hotter to me, Phil, driving a taxi. Come on.
it was shortly after that, like, we would sublet apartments and come up like 77, 78, 79. So I moved to the Lower East Side like 79, 80, 1980. And then
Apartment for 2 hundo.
yeah, and and then all that, and then we were playing and stuff, and then as everything else goes, the shrapnel thing kind of died out. Then there was when CBs kind of became like not that valid, and then like Daniel wanted it, we kind of got commercialized, we got tied up with some major label stuff, it didn't quite work out. And then I just got like I wanted to do something else. I want to do something else, and musically it was just not happening for me because I was influenced by so many other things, and I wanted to do other stuff, and so I didn't do anything for a number of years. And then I put the Blitzspeer thing together with Scotty and Kurt and those guys, and then we yeah.
Let's just describe the sound of Blitzspear for a minute, because it was very hard, very rock, and really some of the songs, I mean, Sonic Glory, absolutely freaking commercial, but in the best way possible.
Yeah, it was one of those again, like, and we got caught at a time where like there was a lot, there started to be this bubble up of stuff going on in New York again, and it was kind of more rock based.
What year, what period is that?
I want to say that was like 85 to 87, and so then there's a lot of other things going on, but like those are the guys I ended up with when I met Scotty, and like, oh, let's do a band kind of thing, and
And what made you decide that that now you're going to be the lead singer and lead guitar player and writing the songs?
that came out of default. Because Scotty and I started a different project, a different band. We were going to work with this guy. I was going to play bass. Scotty was on guitar. We had some drummer, and Four-Way from Bad Posture, 7 foot tall frontman. We're like, that's got to be our frontman. 7 feet fucking tall, Bad Posture, out of his fucking mind, San Francisco. We were going crazy on the Lower East Side. We started writing songs together. And we never could really get it together. Part of it was my problem. And so then I kind of disappeared. And when I reappeared and called Scotty up, he was like, look why don't you come up? Why don't you come up to the studio tonight and play some guitar? We found a bass player. I was always going back and forth between guitar and bass. And Scotty put a set of lyrics in front of me. He's like, you're going to sing. Four-Way can't handle it. You're going to be the singer and guitar player. And let's do this. And it was almost exactly like that. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, all right. And at that time, I was a better bass player than guitar player. So I wanted to do like, more like a early Motorhead thing with like this massive lead singer guy. And it didn't quite.
Well, your vocals were great though, and your guitar playing was pretty already for supposedly being a bass player. It kind of rose to the challenge there, Phil.
Well, thank you. Because I think it's maybe because I've always geared myself more as a rhythm guitar player, and so and some of my influences on guitar go back to more of that rhythm thing and more of like a vibe and a feel thing. So that's
like who? Keith Richards or something like that, or
well, Keith is like the ultimate of that. But like like when you listen to Thunders, like Thunders, and even Johnny Ramone, and even Brian Gregory from the Cramps, it's just all like, I remember standing in front of that guy. How could you not be influenced by that man? The sonic fucking, the tremolo.
And the tremolo.
and the fuzz and like so. But I was able to, and then Fast Eddie Clark from Motorhead. I always love those kind of styles, and you know the be all Tony Iommi. You know,
Oh, I'm sure.
you know, Sabbath was like big in my day. You know,
Hmm.
the first four records. You know, and Johnny, you know, Johnny Ramone, good old Johnny Ramone, man. I don't think it's enough credit as a guitar player.
All
And
right,
as,
so Phil, when you go from bass to guitar, like pedals, amps, what was like? Okay, I have to have this sound. Did you know what sound you needed and what you needed to make that sound? Like,
well, not yet. The thing that I got lucky with was Scotty worked in a rehearsal studio, so we had access to some good equipment. You know, he worked at this rehearsal room called Top Cat, so we were able to go up there and get free rehearsal time, like from midnight on.
Oh, cool.
Break out what we rehearse from like midnight to like 5 in the morning sometimes, you know, and
witching
so
hours.
and when you're a kid and you have no money and you can walk into a place that has a Marshall already there, you plug into it's like, oh, now I get it. Now I get the power. I get the volume. I'm able to plug into an amplifier that all my heroes used and like you know what I mean? Like that I saw on all these massive stages, you know, and yeah, I remember going to see Kiss in 1975 and like Ace Frehley with the stack of Marshalls, you know, like come on. So yeah, so there was a transition there, but it overlapped and it went pretty smooth. And then we had Fleck playing bass. It was like the guy could barely play, but he was awesome. He was great. He had a vibe. It was more of a vibe. We were really
Had a
lucky to have
vibe.
a vibe.
Had a vibe. Had a vibe. And the thing is, though, Blitzer did carry on kind of the shrapnel. It did kind of, it was kind of the mature version of going in a kind of similar direction.
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
was a real bridge to like you then being in Monster Magnet, I think.
yeah. Well, yeah. It's so you know it was funny that around that whole time, I would come back to Jersey occasionally to visit my family, and I'd go see Windorf because we always stayed friends. And he started this band called Monster Magnet right down the street, like right here. He started making these 4-track cassettes. He started doing his thing and it started bubbling through the underground. And Dave was really in, you know, he kind of was really influenced by the garage rock thing. You know, the whole all the compilations and stuff and all these weird bands. He's like an encyclopedia of garage rock. And I
What's
think
interesting is, I'd be on a lot of festivals with I don't know what, and Monster Magnet would be on it. I would meet the other guitar players before you joined.
right.
I'd be like, Monster Magnet, okay.
Mhm.
But it really
Yeah.
wasn't until Power Trip, one of my, I have to say, I'm never going to work another day in my fucking life is one of my favorite songs ever.
Yeah, well,
I sing it all the time.
that was kind of like the evolution for Dave and I was that I was around a lot of the early stuff at a lot of shows here in Jersey, Court Tavern, CB's, you know, like uh so these bands started to use CB's again as a place to because there was really not much going on. And there was a
Are you
court
talking what year is this? Like more like the 90?
I want to say again in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, and then you started to see some things evolve. Then there was Maxwell's in Hoboken, there was the Court Tavern in New Brunswick, and then there was all these other little places out here, the Brighton Bar in Long Branch.
To be
So
able to play and develop what you want to do.
yes. And so they did the first 3 records and I had, you know, Blitzspear had its day and I moved to Los Angeles and so Dave was out there doing the record, doing Power Trip. He's like, look, just come back to Jersey and play in this band once and for all. I wanted you in the band. You were doing the Blitzspear thing. The timing was never quite right.
Back to like the origins because you both were in Shrapnel. So here
We're
we
back
go.
in our hometown, Red Bank, New
Back
Jersey.
back with the bros.
We're back in, you know, Jersey is a awesome place, man. It's like
You know I love the Jersey boys.
there's something about being back and creating where you're from. And when I had done New York, I had done LA, I spent a little time in Europe, and then to come back home and play music, with somebody you grew up with, that you were in the same room with all those influences. So we became very connected at that level of like, you know, Dave, as I started to work with him in the studio and create with Dave, he will have these visions of what he wants things to sound like, and he has an idea how to get them, but we'll sit down and just make it happen like right here. You know, like, okay, you know, and we don't really think all that much about it. You know, like I remember like the one of the records, we were up in Vancouver recording, and this producer we were working with, this is one of my favorite Dave Windorf stories, brought up this collection of like 100 fuzz pedals. You know, like, okay, you really only, you know. So we're up there with the guitar tech and we're going through every fuzz pedal. And the producer comes in, what are you guys doing? We're documenting fuzz pedals, bro. He's like, you brought 100 pedals? I'm going to listen to every fucking one. And he took out a notebook and he made notes of what everyone did and what it didn't do. So he knew what he wanted to use. He goes, you could have brought 10. Yeah. So, you know, I did a solo record that's getting ready to come out.
I'm very excited about this.
It's finally came. It's what I did during the COVID times. You know, I went through some stuff, and it was just time. The timing.
So what's the difference between, or does it showing more size? Look, when you're in first of all, I do love Monster Magnet, but I mean, in spite of Dave having various tentacles that he goes off into, you still know it's Monster Magnet. So what's the difference between your solo stuff?
Well, you know,
or diverse?
It's more of just me personally, you know, like I struggled when it was, so I started to, I had a bunch of material that didn't, you know, I always write and I always riff out, and I have my studio here, so that's always kind of.
I remember times when you'd sing me a song on your acoustic guitar. I was just enjoy.
So things started like evolving and we weren't doing anything. And so I dug up some stuff, and I got together with this one drummer, and it kind of wasn't going anywhere. And so I had this chunk of songs and I was like, I should just finish it. And Raphael through Wendigo helped me out to just like buckle down. And she's like, look, let's do this record. You know, I couldn't have done it without Raph and Wendigo. Because I had done some.
What's Wendigo?
Wendigo Productions is it's like a production company in New York that Raphael works for. And she's like, I can get you, you know, a couple of bucks so you don't have to worry about it. We're not really a real record label, but they did a record with Scotty's band 10 Ton Mojo and some things like that. And she's like, if you want to do something, you know, I'll talk to Wendy about it and see if we can get,
so when is that? When is your solo thing coming out, and what's it called?
It's coming out. It's looking like late May. It's coinciding with the Monster Magnet tour. And I'm calling it Caivano, just my last. Because I went through band names and I'm searching and I'm like, that sounds stupid. Oh, that one's taken. This one's that one is. I'm like, everyone's going to say Phil Caivano from Monster Magnet anyway. So why not just use my fucking name and come after me for it? If you know,
come and get it. Are there any acoustic tracks? I mean, acoustic guitar.
There is more.
How did I know?
There is the last track is somewhat acoustic, and some very psychedelic, trippy stuff. And you know, I struggled for a second there. I was listening, I was like, God, man, I sound like the guitar player of Monster Magnet. I'm like, well, I am. You know, and I tried to do some stuff that was different, and that kind of got pushed to the wayside. So I finished the bulk of songs, for better or worse, and I was really happy to do it. I worked with Magnet's drummer. Bobby's got another studio, so I was like, you know, from where I felt like I wasn't really creatively pushed by this one drummer. Bob kind of got it. Bob is a very talented guy, Bob Pantella. And you know what it's like, Lydia, when you just get with somebody who just kind of gets what you want
Gets
to
it.
do and
Yeah,
it helps you
well,
with
yeah.
your backbone. And I said, look, I'm going to give you 3 songs. And it was great. I went up there and he just paced around the studio smoking. And it's like, okay, I'm ready to go. And it just started clicking. Before you know it, we had a record done. And so
And I think it's about time, Phil, because you've produced, engineered, played bass, played rhythm guitar, and so many other things. And I think it's really good timing, my friend. Needs to
yeah,
come
and
out.
some things worked out, printing it here in America. Third Man is printing the record. I went to them because of the guy who mastered the record, Bill Skibby. It was third. It just ended up with Third Man mastering after my mastering search, and Bill kind of got it. He was very excited to do my first solo project, and he was like, "Look at this vinyl weight is incredible." He goes, "Are you aware how long this is going to take?"
Yeah.
And I said, "No, I'm not." I don't know what. He goes, "Well, let me get you." And he goes, "If you want to do it through Third Man, I can make some calls and get you in the queue." So and then like, look at, I admire Jack for what he actually does.
Jack
And,
White? Oh, so do I.
like, he puts his money where his mouth is.
I love a lot of his songs, I have to say.
Yeah.
He's an
And
amazing
like,
performer. He's he takes a straight path and twists it always.
and with what he's doing with the manufacturer, with Third Man Pressing, and it's like, the quality is so good. And I have to say, from dealing with everybody I've dealt with in that organization, with getting my own personal thing that I put a lot of blood, sweat, and time in, that it's nice to work with people who get it on every level.
Right. Right.
Not
Because you've had experiences with major record labels. I mean, even from Shrapnel
oh,
was releasing
nightmares.
records. And then, I mean, Monster Magnet, and there's, you know, let's just talk about that for a minute. Monster Magnet got really big for a minute because it hit at a point, especially with the videos, MTV, and all of that.
Right.
Made a lot of sense. And, and it just did. And the thing is, of course, Europe is where we're all going to always forever be more popular. That's why we're
Right.
both going there again and again.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. But you toured with a lot of people during that time too.
Yes.
Um, who were the worst and who were the best? What was the
Oh
best experience? I remember
boy.
once when I was living in Pittsburgh, and I don't know, Kid Rock might have been opening for you, and I didn't go to that. I'm like, I didn't like him then, I don't like him now. I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Well, touring with Bob, like, we actually took Bob out with us, Kid Rock. And
When he wasn't such an asshole. Or maybe he
yeah,
was then too. I don't know.
well, his whole story is just, it's Bob. When we took Bob out with us, there was a lot of money behind him. Atlantic Records was really, really behind him, and it was his first kind of big tour. And he opened with us, and those guys. I'm still good friends with Kenny Olson, the guitar player. Like, that's, I always end up with those guys. And that was a real fun tour. I'd have to say the most unfun tour, and I don't mind saying, was the Rob Zombie tour.
Why was that?
Understandable.
They weren't that nice to us.
Interesting. Huh.
And
But did they ask you to join their tour, or they joined your tour?
well, back then, there's always money involved, and I don't know a lot about that stuff. We had the same managers at the time, and that kind of like got us on the tour with Rob, and who's doing what, and who's all these different things I don't know a lot about, but that was not that fun of a tour.
Well, and he had a big enough ego, for better or worse, to then actually be able to make some horror films.
And then, it's funny, like, years and years after that, and, I ran into Rob in the lobby on that tour. It's like, Rob, what the fuck is going on this tour? Like, what the fuck? It's me here. Like, we know each other from the Zombie Blitzspeer days. Like, what the fuck? And he was like, and it was his tour, man. And then there were some things that years later, I talked to Rob, and he told me he did not know what was going on. His tour people just did not like us for some reason.
So what were they doing to let you know they didn't like you so much?
Oh, no sound checks, not allowed into catering until all their whole tour and entourage ate, all these little things, cut time, this and that, no production, sound. Oh, we sounded too
Well, how
good.
most opening bands are often treated by major bands, which is why they're fucking dicks, and it's not the scene or scenario we came out of.
Right, right. And okay, and I'll give the example of where it did not exist. And you go to that level when we toured with Aerosmith.
Okay. What happened?
They were so great to us.
Okay.
You know, you grow up a fan and you're sitting in your dressing room the first day. We had to sign off on all this stuff that we weren't allowed to do. You know,
Okay.
so first night,
Such as what?
no drinking in front of them, no open containers, no
No
beers.
girls under 14.
Yeah, all this stuff, like all this stuff, right? So we had to sign, everyone in the band had to sign this paperwork, and through
Like an
management,
NDA. Like,
we're
yeah.
like, this is going to be really, really strict. And so we're sitting there, and first day in Philadelphia, knock on our dressing room door. Tyler and Joe Perry walk in, like, hey, Kyle's like, hey, my name's Steven. This is Joe. We're like, yeah, we know who you guys are.
Nice.
They're like, look at all that stuff you signed on. Don't worry about it. All we ask is you guys, don't push it. We want you to have a really good time and have fun on this tour. It's about rock and roll, and we're very happy to have you on this tour. And then the other tour that was kind of like the most insanely fun tour was when we toured with Marilyn Manson.
Which years were that?
Yeah.
Or what year was that?
That was in, I want to say, in the 2000s.
So Marilyn Manson was already huge at that point. Yeah.
Well, it was a very interesting tour because it was Monster Magnet, Hole, and Marilyn Manson. So we got to, and it was like, and then the venues were way too big for what that tour.
Right.
It was booked in arenas, and it wasn't that big, only in certain places. But we watched Courtney lose her shit. We watch
Forever.
Brian go berserk and kind of like push her over the edge. Twiggy was phenomenal, and it was just watching this big ship kind of sink, and like buckets of water go, and I gotta give Manson a lot of credit where he was just like, I'm going down with the ship. I don't give a fuck, and just kind of pushing it. And he was a lot of fun to be around, and we had a really
At
great
that
tour.
time, yeah.
That was
But
in
Phil,
90.
you just,
No,
you
no,
just,
that was
go ahead.
in 99, 2000.
Yeah. You
1990.
hit on something that I think is very important for your longevity and maybe even my longevity as well, is we're pretty fucking steady.
Yeah.
You and I are, Tim is also very steady. We're very fucking steady.
Yeah.
Now the ships may go down around us, but I'm not going down with it.
No. No,
I
the
mean,
other-
you may have tipped to the side here and there way back in the past. We may have done that. We ain't going down with nobody else's ship, and our
No.
ship is not sinking. We're
No, and
fucking
it was-
steady.
Yeah, and then the other tour that was kind of like a really great experience and on a whole nother level is when we toured Europe with Metallica in the late 90s.
Well, so that's huge. I mean, you're playing football stadiums at that point.
Yes. And they, first show in Stockholm at a giant soccer arena, Lars sneaks out to the sound booth and he tells her sound man, they're not loud enough. Give them more. And they treated us great. And to see that machine, it was like being on tour with the military. You know what I mean? There's security's like Secret Service. You know what I mean? It's just like, wow, back then. And there's really nice people, crew guys, helpful, everything along the way. We've been really fortunate.
Yeah, and it's good to hear that, and then it's interesting to hear shitty behavior from basically a scuzz rocker, Rob Zombie, and then the bigger up certain bands were totally fucking cool.
And it just goes to show you too, and that's also too, growing up, like, I'm still a fan of music. I'm still a fan of art, like we were talking before. I'm still that kid that just loves to get out there and check out a museum, check out a weird show. I don't care what it is, and you hear the stories over the years, but you want to hold on to the good stuff and look at the good stuff. So even with Magnet tours, if a venue doesn't have it, let the opening band take the room. Like, we're out there on a fucking bus, you know what I mean? Like, we can do what we need to do. The show must go on. And like,
We're
what,
show folk. It's what we
and
do.
like, and what we do, yeah, it's like we're carnies, right? It's like, we're traveling salesmen, carnies, snake oil, the whole fucking bit. It's all the above. And what we do is, at the end of the day, it's really not that fucking important. And these guys hold on to their important, these people hold on to it's so fucking important. It's like, no, it's not. There's people dying left and right. There's like shit going on in the fucking world. It's like, who gives a fuck? Get over yourself.
And why it is important is this, because people want a bit of relief from the fact that the world's a mess. It's in my kiss, to quote X. The fact that the apocalypse is now. So why rock and music still matters for us to do it is to bring that relief. But it's not for us to fucking pretend as if we're saving the planet, because we're not. We're saving individual people, hopefully, from committing suicide or homicide. Tim,
Right.
you had a question. Sorry.
Well, no, there was a kind of a funny story about Metallica, because Lydia and I, we were touring and we are going from Stockholm to Malmo or something like that. The van breaks down about 100 feet where there's I was like, I wonder where we are, in the middle of Sweden, like a farm or something. Where are we? There's a shrine to what's the name? The Cliff Burton.
Oh, Cliff Burton.
We broke down where that accident actually happened, like some cursed spot or something. Like, but there it was. There's this little shrine on the side of the road. Like, what the fuck is this? Anyhow, that's what I was thinking. But what do you think of the that whole thing about like the opening band and not being loud enough, and the whole drama? They want to create this dramatic effect that like the best sound is the headline, right? I always thought that was such bogus bullshit when they pull that of it.
I never really paid too much attention to that, because after that wave where we were doing a lot of that big stuff, we weren't doing that much of it anymore. And so I think that's kind of like, it's ridiculous, because if somebody's paying, I don't care whether it's $5 or what it is now, $500 to go see a fucking show, give them their money's worth. From the minute they get there to the minute they leave, give them their money's worth. Like, to you know what I mean? To hold back and stuff. Like, you're the headliner. Who fucking cares?
I mean,
And also, no matter what position you're in, opening, closing, first, last, in the middle, you're going to do the best you can fucking do, because you're there to do the show. And you're there to fucking do what you do.
Yeah. And my favorite shows are always in a small theater or a fucking club. You can really feel the power of what, or one of my, I'll have to say, one of my favorite shows I saw in the last bunch of years was out here in Asbury Park when Mark Lanigan played. God bless Mark Lanigan. There weren't many people there. And here's Mark up there doing his thing, and he was fucking fabulous.
I covered a Mark Lanigan song, Revolver. I'm going to send that to you, Phil.
Giving his whole, like,
amazing.
It didn't matter that, and I'm sure he would have been the same guy,
right,
in front of 50,000 people, or maybe there was 100 people in the venue that night.
Yeah. Well, and those 100 people mattered.
And that's why always my, admiring Lydia so much. It's like, if you're an artist, you're an artist, you know what I mean? Because the art, what we do with art is really with what it comes down to. We just happen to do it through noise. We happen to do it through guitars and vocals. You do it through words and books and things and stuff. And, it comes down to our art, right? And I think sometimes these musicians are just so pompous and so fucking go jerk off. Leave me the fuck alone. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, are you an artist, or are you a pompous fucking idiot? You're a pompous idiot. You're going to be.
And there is a big fucking line drawn right down the middle of those divides. Thank you very much. Hello.
You know what I mean, Lydia?
I do.
Well, speaking of which, any good Courtney Love meltdown stories? You said that she was melting down.
It was just fucking phenomenal, man. Like, just seeing Brian just like push her, you know what I mean? And he had this thing where, he's an instigator, man. He would just instigate stuff. And that tour just ended. Just made sense that she bailed in Los Angeles. The whole tour went through started like the Midwest, worked its way out west into Northern California, then back down. And she left the tour in Los Angeles because she's like, we're done here. And then that was the big thing, is this tour going to be over or not? And Manson decided to keep it going. That's why I meant, like, watching the ship, like it was just us guys, Manson and there was, I forget the name of the other band that was on there, but we just had a blast. And he was like, let's just have fun doing this thing, man. Like the Wicked Witch is dead kind of thing. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it was like. You know what I mean?
No comment. I do. Yeah.
That's what it was kind of like. It was almost like the Wizard of Oz. And and Brian, even though the arenas weren't packed, it was like kind of the ground floor and up. He really gave a great show, man. He really gave a great show.
So when we meet in Spain, what point of the tour will you be in? Beginning, end, middle?
I think that's kind of like, I looked at it. It's within the first couple of weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. The first
I can't wait.
Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun.
Oh my God.
There's a couple, I know we're starting in Estonia.
Okay.
We're starting in Estonia, and
Tallinn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Then we'll do Sweden rock and stuff like that. Then I know we're back in Germany for like a minute, or Hellfest or something like that up in France. And we have a 2-day drive to get to
What was
Spain.
the most recent Monster Mash? I mean, was it 2020, the latest Monster Mash? Is there another one since that?
No.
Album?
So what happened with us was 2020 was our last tour. And then we were booked on other stuff that just kept getting canceled. And last summer, Dave canceled where we were supposed to go out. And it looks like for us, it's kind of been a blessing in disguise, because we kind of did want to wait it out a little bit, because we started getting a lot of reports that like it's really not all that out there. And then last year, the expenses like went bananas.
Ridiculous. Yeah. No, we have the same problem. I mean, we're only doing 5 shows when we go to do the Spanish festival with you. It took so much maneuvering to even make it worthwhile at this point. It's ridiculous.
Right. And so last summer, bands that went out, you committed to those guarantees so much earlier in the game. Then the fuel price was so fucking crazy, everything was going on. Managers were coming back to band members and asking, hey, well, the guarantees are this, but the expense is that. You're going to go home with no money. And they've canceled for other reasons, but it turned out that like it's the best thing that ever happened. And now things are like way more stable. For us guys, we did a cover record at the beginning of 2022. Finally, we did that. I did my own record, and I have all the support from the Magnet Camp to, we're not, to sell my stuff and promote my stuff out there. So the timing just worked out. I had that whole wait for the vinyl. All this stuff is just kind of lining up.
The lockdown. I mean, a lot of musicians actually, because they were getting the paychecks, didn't do so bad. I mean, some people really fell into a funk, but I compared it to like when you're before you're 14 or 16 or 14, and you're like and you're waiting for something to happen. It had that feeling of when you're just a kid wanting to get going on something. But I mean, we did stuff. People still did stuff. It was just a different phase, and I don't think it was that detrimental. I think it was very beneficial to me as well. I didn't, and I kept touring anyway because I am the fembot.
Yeah, and again, looking back, it's 3 years later. Looking at this time 3 years ago, I'm very fond of like, take that step back. It's like, I'm not a kid no more. Take that step back, see what it's really all about, enjoy where I'm at, like all this stuff, like all these other things around me. Of course they're important, but like, just buckling down.
But Phil, this is why I still and always have loved you, is there is something really down to earth, bizarrely, people wouldn't think that about me, about both of us. We're like ground level, and we just keep doing what we fucking do, and nothing's gonna stop it. It doesn't matter if it's out in a club, if it's in a fucking venue, if it has to just be in our living room, if it's just in a phone call. We're not stopping. It's what we are.
No.
It's what we do. It's what we do.
Yeah, and most of the people complaining about everything during the initial chunk of the pandemic were just like people I wouldn't even associate with anyway.
Or they had one thing and that's all they had, and that thing was cut off. So what are they going to do?
Yeah,
Not
and
like
granted,
that. We're
and granted,
jugglers.
like,
We're
I
professional
get it.
jugglers. We're carnies, like you said.
Yeah, like
Chauffeurs.
I get it. Like, you know, it was a horror, like a lot of bad stuff happened, but like I think looking back at it, like the good stuff that did happen, like the creativity, the taking a step back, you know, like hanging out with my nephew. My nephew's asking me like crazy, you know, he's playing guitar. He's over here this afternoon going nuts. Like he became really good, like little like things you can't see, but if you take the time to see them, are really, really more important, you know, like really taking care of the small picture. Like you and I can still like, I can get excited over a fucking cup of espresso at a shitty fucking cafe where it's not all this big shit, you know, and like I love people not, hey, I love people not being in my way.
And no, and Phil, that is the fucking key, what you just said. Because people look, as Americans especially, we're fucking gluttons. And when you're a glutton, nothing is ever enough. The only way that you're gonna fill that void is by going, I can take joy in a good cup of espresso and
Yeah.
appreciating the small shit. Because
Because
otherwise it's overwhelming and you're perpetually dissatisfied and then you're fucking depressed. And I'm not depressed, and you're not depressed, and
no,
Tim's not depressed, and we're not gonna be depressed because we
no,
got to appreciate.
yes. And I
Such an
think
important thing.
yeah, and I think that's one thing like that time frame was good for me. And I was able to just like, hey, I got nothing going on. Tour got canceled. Let me see what I got. Let's make a record. You know? Let's you know, I did a couple other little creative things. I'm actually doing something really cool. I'm working with this there's a guy named Rob Ryan. He's an artist and a tattooer from out here in Asbury Park. He has this musical project called Soma Kirtan, and it's like all this, like I'm in the studio 2 weeks ago. You know, Rob and I saw them do this performance in a church in Asbury Park. I'm like, this needs to be recorded just like that. So I found this studio. I got these guys playing like these crazy Indian instruments, not one electric instrument, not one electric guitar. Like they're banging on things with pencils and sticks and things. And like, so that excited me, man. Like, you know what? If I'm sitting here worrying about like my life, I'm not going out and looking and finding like when I knew Rob was playing his weird ass music, something I'm nothing, you know, that I would really know too much about. But when I heard his ensemble play the music, I started backtracking musically. Like, I want to know what this kind of music sounded like in the 50s and 60s. So I found a studio that had all that shit to have them in to record it like that.
All of those like more acoustic out instruments as opposed to plugging in a guitar.
Lydia, it's all drones and chanting. It's fucking
Nice.
insane. Yeah. So look it, you got to find it around you. And a lot of the stuff is like, you know, again, back to you and I, it's like we've been through a lot of shit personally over the years. And most people who've been through shit have some stuff.
We
And
got
like,
some stuff, Phil. We got stuff.
you know, like, but good stuff,
We got good stuff.
that good stuff of like, you know, a lot of these artists today just don't, that's why they want to sit home and talk to people like you and I. Well, what was it like in 1977? We can tell them, but they're not going to fully get it. They can get the T-shirt. They can get they can, you know, they can read the stories and they can pretend. They can get the right hairdo. They can find the right clothes, but you either did it or you didn't.
They could
Well,
eat.
you
They
know,
could eat
like,
at the. Sorry.
go ahead, Tim.
No, you can eat at the CBGB's in Newark International Airport. Have you
Oh my
seen? Have you
God.
seen that fucking thing?
But you
I
wouldn't eat
have.
at CBGB's back in the day when they were making chili and it smelled like dog shit. You
Oh,
just wouldn't fucking do it. You
I
just
remember it with the
wouldn't do
dog,
it.
Hilly's dog walking around, and oh my God.
People have no idea what a fucking pit of disgust that place was. I mean, it was so filthy. It was so nasty. Rats out back. I don't know how many times I got kicked out of the bathroom there by Hilly's wife, but that's just me. I'm
Oh
just
my God. Yeah, yeah. Oh my God. Oh,
saying.
but
Yeah.
but
Well, Phil, it's been amazing
yeah,
reconnecting
thank
with
you for
you.
having me. Really great to do this, and you know, it's always a pleasure, you know. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and just like the intelligence level is great. And just like what I love about talking with you, Lee, it can be really intelligent and just dumb it the fuck down where it comes
We
down to.
can do whatever we want.
It's so good.
What car you driving now, Phil? I think the last time I saw you it was an orange Camaro. Am I wrong?
Well, it's an orange Challenger, and I'm still driving.
Oh,
Ooh.
you're
Yep.
coming over soon. That's all I know.
Yeah, the
We're going
Challenger.
for a ride.
The Challenger's rocking.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, and look, I mean, more than 3/4 of our life we've
It's
known each
crazy.
other.
And we're alive to tell the tale. It's fucking great.
Not going
Amazing.
anywhere.
I'm
And
looking
as a
forward
matter
to
of fact, we're going one place. We're going to Spain together.
We're
We're
going
gonna
to
be
There we
there.
go. Which I look forward to. So I'm
Yeah, me
Can't
too.
wait.
Me
Yeah.
too.